Guys, we are back here covering Orange is the New Black, Episode 6 and Episode 7. Don't miss it. It's coming right up.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
The animal, trap, trap, trap till the cage is full. The cage is full, the day is new, and everyone's waiting on you, and you've got time. Okay, I'll stop.
Damn,
okay,
bro, I love it.
Stop.
I tried going a little. I can't go that far.
What's up, everyone? We are back with Orange is the New Black. You can follow us on social media at hashtag OITNB. And now I'm forgetting ATB. I'm getting it confused now. Let me start again because my mind was jumbled. All right, everyone. We are back because we were off last week because the 4th of July. We were putting, our patriotic
hats on.
And we enjoyed ourselves. And I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Scott Moore. You can find me on the Twitter at sman80. That's sman80. And to my left,
I am Lesley Corral, new to the Orange is the New Black panel, and so excited.
Yay!
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at LesleyTaFace.
Yes, and we're so excited to have you on here, Lesley.
Thank you.
And April and Sterling, unfortunately, we're out of town, but we're hoping next week that we'll have the full panel together, reunited once again. But it's great to have you join us for the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as I was trying to say earlier before I completely messed up, is that you can follow us on social media with hashtag OITNBABTV. See, it's such a jumble. It's a lot of letters, and my head is already burnt out from a very long day. But again, glad to have you here, and we're happy to have you join us.
I've been obsessed with this show since it started, and I love it, and I'm such a fan of this season especially. Yeah. We've never kind of seen them literally just unfold a day or a couple days worth over a whole season. So it's exciting. I love it.
And that's a really good point because we've actually talked about this in some of the previous recap episodes of the season, is that, part of when we first started, especially with episodes 1 and 2 recapping, we're trying to figure out the timeline because, like you said, in seasons past, it's been a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Duration of time, it's been months, over periods of months. And in this particular episode, it's really unique because the time is within a 72-hour window for the entire season. And so it is...
Very 24.
It is, and it's really fun to kind of see it happening. And as April had brought up, which was a good point a couple of episodes ago, is that basically we are seeing it all in real time, and we're just seeing everyone's perspective. So, that helps us out a little bit. But we're also still getting the flashbacks, which is one of my favorite things of this show and the series, is being able to incorporate those flashbacks to always get a little bit more nuggets of each of the characters and their backgrounds and sort of where they were at different stages of their life. That helped them become the person they were today and how they ended up where they were.
It's one of the best parts of Orange is the New Black.
And another thing I was going to mention, because Chelsea was here last week, and Chelsea works a co-host with me on the Trump Report, which we do previously to coming onto the show. And she brought up a good point, and I wanted to just elaborate on that before we delve into the actual episode in 6, was she had talked about, better training for the COs, for the guards, and having these correction officers maybe go through what it's like being in jail and being in prison as an actual prisoner. And there was this really, really cool article in the LA Times, and I've got to dig it up so I can post it on there for social media for everyone to find it. But in this opinion piece, they went a step further, and they basically had said that every single citizen, much like jury duty, should have to be up to actually spending week in jail, several days in jail, once a decade. So everybody, no matter who you were, had to actually go into prison as a way to better understand what the prisoners go through in the everyday life, and that this opinion article's thought process was that it would help Americans in general, much like the military now going out and fighting wars, then it doesn't really affect a large majority of the population. Most people don't know people in prison and what they go through. And what's so great about this show is the fact that it really brings and humanizes these characters and what these women would go through in real life in prison, and helps people from outside that world really understand, and that's what's done beautifully with the show. And so I thought the opinion article was really an interesting idea. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if I actually would like to go into prison for a week,
but an interesting take.
But it is an interesting take, and just helping people be able to relate better to what it's like for a prisoner, and that's what the show has done such a great job on.
I feel like it's so easy to just ignore them. You're like, oh, they're others, like, you know, they did some crime. They're bad people, they deserve it. But, you know, everyone's human, we make mistakes, and, you know, for some people it sucks because it ends up defining their whole lives.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that, you know, they should be treated like, you know, subservient humans.
Sort of a substandard, and that was the other, and that's the great thing that this show has brought to light. And you just hit on a point too that we had a couple episodes ago too, that now they're sort of running their own, I would say, government inside Litchfield right now. And in one of the cases, because these women were in it, you know, they put with the whole trial in the court that they were doing a couple episodes ago, they basically brought up the fact like one crime should not define an entire person in their life. And that's sort of what happens with criminals here, and what the show does a great job at overall arc, and also showing the COs on the other side of where, okay, these people, it's much more gray area. It's not so black and white like you did this and that, where a lot of other people do similar things that just didn't get caught.
Yeah.
And we see, you know, different backgrounds with people of color being unfairly targeted, and people the poverty level, and people with the recidivism rates, because it's almost easier for some of these people, because once they're out and they can't find a job because they're automatically stained as being a prisoner and a felon, that it's easier for them to almost to go back, and that recidivism rates go up because their families in there.
Circumstances do affect people's lives.
They have a shelter. They have 3 meals a day. There's structure where you don't always get that when you're outside the prison. And it's really sad when you start digging a little deeper into, you know, sometimes people do these crimes again just so they are able to go back to prison, because they felt so hopeless. They have nothing in the outside, and no family, no strong friendships and attachments. So there's a lot to it.
Someone like Tasty is a perfect example.
Exactly.
You saw, like, she really had, like, you know, the worst upbringing, no stability, no parents, and the second she thought she had found her mother, you know, was once
so
again disappointing. But you've also seen that she's a very intelligent person, and, you know, starting off as Caputo's assistant, and now, you know, running negotiations. But it sucks because she never got a chance to meet her potential or even grow and learn as a person, because she kept getting stuck in these terrible circumstances. So it's something that the show is so good at.
So great at. And so we'll start recapping with episode 7, and I should have said 7 and 8, right? I think I said 6 and 7. 7 and 8, people.
That's
I'm
what
losing
we're recapping
my
today.
head.
If you haven't seen 7 and 8, be careful, because we're going to talk spoilers.
We are, and I don't know if I said 6 or 7 at the beginning, because I'm losing my mind apparently, and it's already been a long week, and it's only Tuesday. But starting with episode 7, Full Bush, Half Snickers, which was a great title, as we found out as we went through the episode.
I loved this episode.
What was your overall thoughts in general?
I loved, because when you first saw the first few hours after the whole riot and everything, you kind of saw a lot of terrible things that the inmates were doing, you know. And this episode made me happy, because it started off with them literally, they just started creating their community. People made little businesses, they created little areas. They were all getting along. Even like the Nazi women were getting along with the Hispanic women, and they set up their own coffee shop. It was really nice, and it kind of I think one of the inmates at one point said, this is what happens when you take away the patriarchy or something, like you just have a little moment of harmony. I wish it could have lasted a little longer, but it was really nice seeing that for the duration of that episode.
Yeah, and I think, again, sort of what we were talking about in the earlier episodes is that they've kind of formed their own community, their own kind of government, their own system here, and their bartering is going on, and like you said, people are starting businesses, and like the coffee shop, and it was just
the makeovers.
The makeovers are going into a whole other level. But it is neat, like we said, when they're sort of left to their own devices a little bit, and they have to kind of form these communities and these ties, and what are their rules going to be. And we saw that in this, and I love the coffee bar scene, because they even had sort of open mic night, and they had like a whole thing going on, and it was it's really cool to see what happens when people are left sort of their own. And it's sort of like if you were to start your own place in a uninhabited island, and everyone was there and marooned, and now they're trying to set up a system and how they're going to get by, and so it's been really fun to watch it.
And it's cool because you also see that a lot of the inmates are actually very talented. Like, I forget the name of the first girl who went up for the open mic, but she had a poem, and it was good.
Yeah.
And then you saw the one making impressions, and they were hilarious. Like, they're actually talented, they're creative, and you don't get to see that when they were in the normal confinement and structure and repetitiveness of prison life. You got to see them kind of flourish a little bit.
Yeah, and you got to see their personalities kind of come out a little bit more. That's I did love that. Now, speaking of personalities, we've seen that Suzanne is definitely
oh my gosh
not in the best mental state.
I was really confused at first because we had just seen her lead the seance.
Yeah.
And she seemed like, she was there and coherent, and then all of a sudden you just see her talking to herself in the room, and it was kind of sad, and it kind of just reminds you that, as much as like she gets better sometimes and has her moments, she still does struggle with mental illness, and she has her moments. And maybe it was the seance that pushed her back in to this little, psychosis state that she's in where she's seeing things. But it was just like a bleak reminder of she's still struggling with stuff. And I think someone made the comment that she needs routine, like, every day doing the same thing, and things have gotten so chaotic. Maybe it was kind of like
it kind of got her out of
lost her grip on reality.
Yeah, exactly, because she didn't have that structure. But it sort of also goes back to, again, the bigger picture of people being in prison that really probably should have had mental health treatment and have the proper taken care of. Just like drug addiction should be handled more in a mental health type of situation rather than a criminal. And so, again, bring this up into these women that people can relate to and that they grow sort of attached to, is going back to the first season when it was all about Piper, and we had to kind of go into that world.
Yeah.
Piper as the vessel to get us into that world.
Yeah.
And then once we got in it, we got to really sort of I don't want to say put our guard down, but in the sense of being able to know these other women because it was such a large cast, and really get to sort of love and become supporters of them, that it was a strong support of women, because it goes back to the writing but also the acting, that then we felt much more invested in each of these women's lives and what they're going through. And so each of these women sort of represent different factions of society and different issues that are going on in the real world. And again, I think that what is so brilliant about the show is that it makes you care about those issues in a whole other level. So we see Suzanne having those mental health issues, and it is really sad because she's talking to what she thinks is her mom and dad, and
they're not there, and she's angry at herself.
Yeah.
I wanted to take a moment though to say that I really enjoyed Pennsatucky in the beginning of this episode, like going around handing everyone her hand concocted what was it, Tang lemon drink that
I know.
like,
I wanted to know, like, if anyone knows
pea.
out there, what is the concoction that she had.
She said it was lemon, and she made it from the lemon candies. And it was making everyone so happy. Everyone's wary at first. Like, what is this? Is it pea? And it's got a funky color.
Kind of like, and also because I know her with her background with drugs and everything, I'm like, what does she have in it? And it wasn't completely clear to me, but maybe people out in the chat know that. And thank you for tuning in with the live chat. I know some people were saying, Davia's life under construction. You're saying I was over Suzanne this season. We haven't seen the rest, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But I can understand.
I'm not caught up.
But I can understand that it can get a little extreme, and she's always been a difficult character as far as sort of trying to rein it in and figure out where she's coming from. Because again, another very smart person that comes from a good place, but obviously is ravaged by mental
and she's like
concerns.
One of my favorite characters. At the end you see her, they gathered up the guards to have like a little story time with them. And I don't know, I felt like she's a really creative person, just naturally. And she's got all these ideas in her head, and she just needs to channel them the right way.
And she's still sort of mentally at a childlike level, very innocent level. And that sort of, she's never gotten past that. So a lot of her stuff comes from a very childlike mentality. Which, as we've seen from the past, has gotten her into trouble more times than once, because she's doing things from a perspective that as an adult you just would not do. That she just doesn't realize she's doing. And
Didn't you love when they were around the circle doing like the story time thing, and she like ended her story really happy, and they lived happily ever after, and then they passed it on, and the guards like made the story ended up going really dark, and then he divorced her, and then he left her, and then he wouldn't pay for her abortion. I don't know how it ended. And
then she's like, let's just put more dragons in there, you know.
Just put dragons.
With that, whenever in
that.
doubt, just throw in a dragon, and you know that's sort of her MO, because she loves all that in her fantasy world with her scripts and everything. But I do understand where she's where Davia's life under construction is saying it's true. I can see the extreme side of her, and it can be a lot to handle, but we haven't gotten through the last couple episodes, so we'll see what happens with her. We also I love when we have Flocka in there and talking about art history and actually being the art teacher, because again it's showing that these women are smart and talented, and they're never given that credit. And then even she tries to downplay it, like, oh, I just banged the art teacher. You know, it was sort of like
smart. They would seriously be YouTube stars, like with and they're already getting subscribers and followers. Like they've got good social media game, and you know that's an important business, you know, job utility that you would have in the real world, and they have that, and that's amazing. And in episode 7, I believe, is when they gave the two girls a makeover, and those were great makeovers, by the way. I loved them.
Oh yeah, with
Nikki.
The
Nikki and the Audrey Hepburn look.
Yeah.
The other makeover wasn't so great. It was I wanted her to do something with her eyebrows, and they kind of just curled her hair and put makeup on her face.
Yeah, they
with Alex.
With Alex was a little, but
it was kind of like I've seen that before. But Nikki, so phenomenal.
Nikki looked so different. I didn't even recognize her first.
And she got to be like, kind of like have a little get back moment at Lorna, which was, I kind of feel like she needed that. That's not fair because she gets played all the time.
Yeah. So, you know, Piper, once again, going in and being the convincer. She should probably go back to law school when she gets out, so she can.
Oh my gosh.
Because she does a very good job of getting into politics. Because she did a very good job, you know, always throughout the seasons and this one in particular, convincing people to do things. And
she hasn't been as annoying this season.
No.
Piper's one of those characters that sometimes I really hate.
Well, talking about, you know, going back to Davia's life under construction is like Piper and the Piper Alex love story, the back and forth, and
I haven't minded her this season.
It hasn't been as extreme, but last season it drove me nuts. And then even at the beginning of the season, I was like, okay, let's stop the whole back and forth thing because it's just getting annoying. Like, let's just. And Piper, again, was one of those characters that really started annoying me when she, you know, was trying to do her stuff in previous seasons. But this year, she's been a little more level-headed.
I feel like they've finally shown a maturity with their relationship because they've kind of ventured off in their own paths during this riot.
And
they're still together. And they're still, like, you know, it seems like, I guess, in a relationship, but they're not identified. They don't have to be with each other.
And they've been
at all times.
They haven't had that, their own little impulses of their selfish side and trying to do things on their own, that they've really been trying to sort of
let each
work
other
on that.
go and do their own thing.
Unlike their relationship with Boo and Linda.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. That relationship is really funny.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up. And at the end of it, I just want to know what's gonna be their reaction after this is all done. Like, is, you know, Boo gonna feel betrayed? Is she happy that she still got some? Or is Linda gonna, like, you know, once you go bush, you don't go back? I don't know. But it's really funny, and I'm really enjoying it. It's hilarious.
I know you have so many different factions going, because then you have Maria, and going back to Alex and Piper, you know, the people out in the lawn, and I just love some of the lines too when Maria said they're like beached whales, but they're more sad when you see some of the women out there kind of sunbathing. But, you know, sort of going back to Maria, who was so much on trying to be the leader, and then has realized, as Alex did, not on purpose, but people were starting to naturally follow her and be like, okay, if I'm out on the lawn, I'm drawing less attention to myself. I'm going to keep my head down. We'll get the amnesty when the riot's over, and we won't, you know, have increased sentences. So a lot of these people have been laying low, and so Maria's been doing that attack, and so a lot of the other women have been out on the lawn to do the same thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy seeing her do it because, again, she was so gung-ho at the very beginning of the season. She was angry, and then as soon as she realized she still had something to fight for, it's almost kind of like...
And knowing she wants to go back for her kids, and after getting the file back, because she had thought, okay, Piscatelli is going to put those extra add-ons to my file, but when she realized that hadn't happened yet, and she had the file when she had talked to Caputo. It was a great way of being like, okay, I'm almost out of here. If I keep my head down, I can get back to my kid.
But, you know, it kind of, I don't know, I feel like I'm still annoyed at her. Like, you know, she really was acting like,
of course,
like crazy.
I know,
like,
it's like a 180 to go
borderline
the other side.
terrorist at the beginning of this season. Like, no compassion, really ugly towards the guards. And now, all of a sudden, she wants to be Miss Peach Sunshine.
Right.
And it's kind of like, you know.
A little much.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about such a short timeline here. But
and it's selfish because she was also still putting everyone else who was following her lead in danger too. It's like, well, I don't care if you guys get added to your sentence. I guess I'm screwed anyway. But now that she's like, oh, I got a shot, forget y'all. I don't know. I still kind of got annoyed at her.
Of course, because at the end of the day, it's going to be about her and what's going to be best for her. And there's always a little bit of that selfishness in there. But I think the other women are also coming around knowing what they need to do to, you know, self-preserve to get through the riot and the amnesty. But, you know, so they're out there. And then on the other side, we've got Frida and the gals kind of smoking and hanging out and having pot and
having a great old time,
gossiping about their crazy sex stories down in the bunker,
Miss Toe fetish, and how they were talking about how, you know, the old gals, like, why do they have to always be the one to clean things up, to keep things in order? So they kind of just took a time out from everything, and they're like, we're just gonna do us for now,
hang and have fun, and as we have seen, like the Frida's incredible bunker there is a fun little escape.
It's cute. I love it.
It is, but it was it's funny to see them kind of in their own world, and in the bigger picture, just kind of seeing how everyone sort of pairs off into their groups, and so they're down there doing their thing right now. You know, we have Morello.
Yes.
Calling her husband.
Oh my gosh, she's so cray.
I know.
Like, why is she so cray?
I know.
All the time.
Yeah.
And my thing is, you know, she's obviously very endearing and will still, I can't hate her, but at the same time, I was just like, oh, I just hope she doesn't screw anything up. Like when she was out on the roof with the flag, with the white flag, and he just bolted after. I felt bad for her, but it's like, don't mess anything up for Tasty and these girls. They're trying to get some justice for Poussey, and she's over here making up things. Do you think she's actually pregnant?
No. But
she's just making that up.
But hey, I could be completely wrong because, you know, by the time we get to episode 12, maybe she is. I don't know.
It's crazy.
From whatever conjugal visit or something happened or something with a guard. But, you know, I who knows? That's the crazy thing about this show is you don't know.
Yeah.
But
Daya told her, you know, as soon as they, you know, have after actual responsibility, they bolt, and that's what happened to her. Which, by the way, I loved seeing Daya's artwork these last two episodes. I feel like I almost forgot in all the craziness of the shooting and the riot that she was an artist. Like she used to draw all the time. She kind of hadn't done that in a while. And her painting on like the shed that there's outside. Is it Bennett? That's what I'm thinking, right?
I think like that's what we're supposed to assume, and I've heard.
And all the legs, because he was missing a leg, and then she shot the guard in the leg. So much symbolism.
So much symbolism, and I haven't read anything because I don't want to know. But it's starting to seem like maybe he does make an appearance again.
Oh my gosh!
You know, there's so much of that mystery of like what happened when he bolted and where is he, and we started seeing more of
on How to Get Away with Murder. But...
on yeah, exactly. We've seen more of like that storyline sort of come back in now, as we'll get to in a little bit.
We got a porn stash cameo.
Yes, we'll get to that in a little bit. But you know, so we're starting to see that kind of come back in the picture to be like, oh yeah, that's right. Bennett did just sort of take off, and what happened with the baby, and you know, what are all these sort of unanswered questions that have been going on from earlier. But you know, like I said before we get to that, I wanted to talk about, you know, Linda and Boo, because it was really cute and the way they opened up, and you know, Boo's trying to be like the taking care of Linda and bartering for the necklace and
defending her honor when the ladies try to take that knife. She was ready for that.
Yeah, that was pretty.
She turned her on quick. I knew that. Like as soon as she did that, I was like, oh my gosh, they're about to go.
Yeah.
Cut to next scene.
Yeah.
You knew that was coming.
Oh yeah. So, but I just thought that was not one I saw coming.
Oh really?
No, I did not see the Linda Boo thing. Did you?
Well, I mean, I didn't expect that when Linda ended up, you know, in the middle of the riot. But then once they started getting like, once she kind of started hanging out with her, I was like, yeah, I could see Linda just going for it. I don't know, she's an odd one, honestly. I'm surprised she isn't an inmate already.
I know. Well,
I mean, she probably would have.
That's what I'm saying. It goes back to what we were saying, is that a lot of these COs and people that are working on the other side of it were also very deceptive and did a lot of bad things and just never were caught. And that was the same thing with Linda, is like, and we saw a little bit of her backstory and other things, is like we see people, there isn't just the black and white, and Linda's definitely one of those. But it's fascinating to kind of watch her be a part of this, because you would think, I don't know, from the very beginning, as soon as that riot was going on, you'd find a way to get out as soon as possible. Like, just get out, you know?
She likes to hang out with girls, and I feel like that's why that whole backstory with, like, her sororities, she kind of is drawn to bitchy girls and bitchiness, and, like, you know, and that's why once she started hanging out with Boo, I kind of thought, yeah, maybe she's just playing with her at the beginning, but I was like, but she's going to end up, you know, actually turning it into a thing, because Boo's charming. Boo's got game. And if Linda's going to entertain it, that means that, like, she's considered it in her head, and she's clearly okay with the idea.
Yeah.
So.
No, I guess I was surprised of not saying that it wouldn't happen, but I just think maybe at this episode, like, just thinking that it happened and that it was sort of a quick thing. And yeah, like you said, Boo's going to go in and make her move if she can. And she's got to weigh in.
Boo hasn't had anybody in a while.
She hasn't. She hasn't.
Thirsty.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and let's see on the rest of this before we get too far off track, because I know we also have to get into the next episode. But, you know, we're also still dealing with the best ideas of what to do for Poussey's remembrance and what is the proper way of honoring her.
That was my favorite part of the episode, when they finally gave her girlfriend, I forget her name at the second.
Brooke.
Brooke. Yeah. A chance to make the hanging library display. It was art, but it really did honor Poussey. And I liked it because in one of the earlier episodes, Brooke and Tasty had kind of had a disagreement over which one was actually Poussey's book, her favorite one. And then she finally acknowledged it was Alice in Wonderland. She kind of gave her that. It was a really sweet moment.
It really was. And putting Piper back in the mix for a moment, just like earlier with the makeovers, she basically convinces Tasty, like, look, let's go with this, because, you know, Tasty and everybody were automatically, you know, shooting down So-So's ideas. Like, no, that's not what she'd want. And, you know, it is hard because you have the shorter sort of romantic relationship and someone who's been best friends with her for years and really feels a vested interest in her, referring to Tasty.
I feel like
they're trying to find each other, is trying to say what's going to be the bigger.
Tasty's almost like first family.
Yeah.
We saw her story.
Right, it was almost beyond a best friend. It was almost like they were family.
They were sisters. She was her first friendly face in the prison. And, oh my gosh, that flashback, by the way, like, almost made me cry.
Oh my God, I know.
Because we hadn't seen her since the death, and it got to me. And I feel like they had such a beautiful friendship and relationship, and every time Tasty, like, goes on a rant or some kind of, like, speech about Poussey, I literally just always want to choke up. By the way, she's been phenomenal this season. She should get nominated for
I know. She's
an award or
had
something,
some great moments.
At least.
But it was great because when you saw that, and it threw me for a loop too, because at first I'm like, wait, is this present day? And, like, she's like, you know, having a mental break and just talking to the spirit of Poussey, like, what's going on? But then as soon as I knew it was their first moment of sort of meeting, and you saw even then that they had this connection that was really special, and that was neat. And I love Tasty. I've loved her since the beginning. I love her, you know, her drive. Again, good person, comes from a good place, incredibly intelligent, incredibly driven, and for
funny.
her, very funny. But for her to sort of take that lead. But we still had Piper in the mix there. That was sort of the voice of reason, saying, hey,
let's give it a shot.
It can't be any worse than anything else. And
then the clam display that they were pitched earlier.
And the hair dolls.
Yeah, the hair dolls.
Oh, my God.
What about the hair dolls? We still got them.
That was so creepy. And I love that Brooke's like, fine, then you can just do the hair dolls. And just like, yes.
No, but it ended up, and then I don't know. I always think, like, logistically, like, how did they get those, like, strings to be so secure on the ceiling to hold all the books without them falling? But hey, that was craftsmanship there. It looked good.
That's the magic of television right there. But no, I mean, when you think about, you know, those are the things of sort of suspending disbelief in the moment of thinking, like, okay, they obviously have, like, art supplies and things like that are there for some of those things that they were able to do during their free time, and thinking that they have full access to everything right now at any time, then you think, okay, they found things to put it together. And it was a beautiful tribute, and it really was sort of a perfect tribute for someone who did love books and bring it out from the library, because and again, connecting it back to the real world, and that, you know, there are quite a few people who have never stepped foot in a library. And so some of the things are, and I've heard both sides of it, of like, oh, the little free libraries take away from the public library. But my whole thing is, because I'm a big reader too, is that giving people access to a little free library that may not go to the regular library or walk in that door is better than nothing. And in a way, it was honoring Poussey's memory, but also maybe bringing books to some of the women there that never would have stepped foot in the library otherwise, and maybe opening their world to reading.
They see a beautiful art display. Oh, let me go check it out.
Right,
okay,
so it was
let me grab a book.
A win-win in a way that I think was also sort of the intention, maybe not directly of the character of Soso, but just in the general bigger picture of again what we deal with in an everyday thing about people being like, oh, libraries aren't important, or why are we funding those still?
Who says that?
There are people, and there actually are people that
these weirdos who don't like libraries.
Don't ever visit them. And there was a whole article about that. Like, there was quite a majority of the population, even here in Los Angeles, that have never stepped foot in a library, and that there's more to them than public books. But again, getting
Libraries
off on
always a good thing, even
tangent.
if you don't get a chance to go visit. I mean, a lot of these girls we've seen didn't get a chance at an education or at support, and reading literacy helps them get smarter, become more intelligent women, start to think for themselves instead of just being caught in these simple ideas that's all they've known.
And independent thinking, and also great escapism from everyday life. So I think it was a really sweet moment and a brilliant one that Soso had, and something that everyone really did enjoy when they saw it. So that was great, because we've seen throughout the episodes sort of what they were going to do with that particular thing, and how were they going to honor Poussey in just the right way. And I thought that was really brilliant on it. Before we get to episode 8 too, I also wanted to get into Red also, because
oh my goodness,
she has definitely on the edge, and she's been having her vitamins, her speed, which we've seen has
fiery, red, crazy,
really got her on the deep end.
So funny.
Yeah. So I mean, and she was starting to look rough because she's not been sleeping.
She's a mad woman with a mission,
and nothing's gonna stop her.
Exactly.
I love that when some of her lines too, with the makeover, like, oh, your eyebrows are plural.
That was awesome, and I feel like that was a really creative and unique pairing, by the way, of them two this season, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like you've seen different sides of both of them that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, and the fun thing is sort of they're on this caper together, and they're working together, which again, like you're right, like they would have been the last people you would have thought would have teamed up for this common cause and
take down Piscatella.
And it was just so funny when she said your eyebrows are plural, and they're talking about the passcode. What's Piscatella's passcode? And talking about the Battle of Waterloo, like just again going off on such a tangent, which was so funny.
And when she cuts the finger off, she did it because the phone locked back itself up. But then she comes back and she's like, "That's brilliant!" Like it's such a good team. Like anyone else would have, like when Nikki saw it, she was like, "That's crazy," but no. The second she saw it, she was just like, that's brilliant.
And also, people that are just so far on a tangent, like, again, Red's not even thinking, because she's so much in the mission, that she thinks it's a good idea to now chop off his finger.
I mean, it is like, what are they going to do? Always go back to him to turn on the phone?
I get it, but it's also, it's such an extreme measure that a logical person on a day-to-day, thinking clearly, not speed-addled brain would be like, yes, I get that this would be good, but logically, it's probably not the best thing to do to chop off someone's thumb to be able to use it for the phone, and that was so creepy, too.
They could just use it once and then change the passcode, and you're good to go.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. A logical thing would be like, okay, we'll go down there, we'll open it up, we'll do what we need to do to change stuff.
They've also not used cell phones, so they might not even know.
No, of course, but at the same time, with a speed-addled brain, she's not thinking clearly, and so for her, that was the most logical thing. Was like, I'll just chop off his thumb, and of course, it added comic relief, although it was a little bit creepy when she.
I don't know if she chopped off the full thumb. I think it's just like the fleshy part at the end.
You could watch it. It's just the. I would say just the tip, but that sounds really bad. You could take that many different ways. But yeah, so basically it was that, but it was still creepy and weird, and also not something that you would do as a normal thing. But Red is
not the creepiest thing on the show. I still think no. Flocka having to be forced to eat the little baby.
Oh no! It's definitely not.
Thing on the show.
And it's sort of nice.
Little baby rat. Did I say rat? I just said baby.
karmic payback in a way, because that was the CEO. Humps was the one that was making him do these disgusting, horrible things. So in a way, he got his karmic retribution by having his thumb cut off. But, again, going off on a rabbit hole tangent here. But I love Red. I think, the acting is incredible, and she's had so many good moments. Another person I would say, sort of in the supporting cast, that should be up for an award, too, because she's just had so many great, the comic relief, and just the physical acting.
And she is her character.
I
don't feel like she's acting. I feel like this is a woman from Russia.
And she's got the accent, and she does the whole thing, and she has the physicality down in such a way that's so brilliant, and some of the physical comedy that she's been doing this season has been awesome. And then we see Nikki kind of coming down from her moment, because she's soaking in the shower. She's fully dressed. She's trying to kind of get herself together, and this makeover sort of helps her a little bit too, because she's coming off of her own issues, which is also great, because she and Red from the very beginning have always had this connection, and to see sort of the roles reversed, when Red was always taking care of Nikki when she was coming down from her drugs and her depression, her issues, to now see Nikki be the one taking care of Red, and that was another sweet moment that I really loved.
It made me look up the word mirth, by the way, when they had that conversation. She was like, "Why aren't you angry at me?" And Nikki was like, "All I feel is compassion, maybe a little bit of mirth." And I was like, "What's mirth?" It means amusement or something like that. But
it was
Orange is the New Black, teaching you new words.
It is mirth and merriment and all that. Very old English word, but a great one to get there too. Anyways, but so we making sure we didn't miss anything. We talked about.
Yeah, we got to make sure we get into
the white flag
8.
and the lasagna and in the oven, and which was a little crazy on Morello's part. We find out too before we get into episode 8 that Gloria's down in the bunker, and we get the signal booster. And so she's able to get a text about her son, and she finds out her son Benny is in the ICU. And so she runs out, and so that kind of ends their fun moment there in the bunker.
Snaps
and
her back into reality.
Back to reality. So she goes back upstairs to try to figure out what is actually going on. And, the other sad thing about this particular episode, too, is the fact of how bad Pennsatucky was treated by her fellow former meth
That was
friends.
so sad, because she started out the episode so happy, passing out her juice that looked like piss, but it wasn't. And then by the end of the episode, they actually peed in it. So it sucked.
It's really, really...
They totally rained on her parade.
And also just the way they're treating her. She can't even go to the bathroom, so now, she's peeing in the hallway worse than what an animal would have to do. I mean, an animal's treated better. So that was pretty sad, what they've done for her, and she's really trying to get her life together. But it goes back to that whole relationship with Coates and my uncomfortableness, and we've talked about this on the panel too, sort of where that line is with the relationship with Coates and her.
It's really strange, and I think it's meant to make you feel uncomfortable.
Of course it is, and it absolutely is.
And she tried explaining it to Boo, and she couldn't, and sometimes you can't. But what's so remarkable about Pennsatucky is that how much did you dislike her at the beginning of this series?
Of course,
hated her, and I just can't believe the transformation of a character that was so despised, and now she's constantly in these situations where she's trying to make the best of it, and we feel bad for her. It's just so crazy how you go from hating to really one of my favorite characters.
And I think that's also happened with a lot of these women too. Mm-hmm. You see their ulterior motives, but then you get to know them better, and you're like, oh, they're not bad people. And also these women have also grown as humans do throughout the time period, throughout the seasons. And yes, you do feel a lot of sympathy for her, and you even to the point where you're like, oh my God, she had an unhealthy relationships in the past. She doesn't know any better, and she's in this certain situation with Coates, and that's the whole thing. And he wasn't in any of these 2 episodes. But moving to episode 8, because we've got less than 10 minutes, tied to the tracks.
Such a good episode.
It's so great, and
a lot of stuff happened.
A lot of stuff, and we see near the very beginning, our fan favorite here on the show too, Figueroa, is back.
Oh my gosh.
She is a wonderful person, Alyssa. We actually had her in when we used to do the spotlight on, and we still do them, but we did them more frequently, and I had actually interviewed her a couple years ago, and we just had a whole hour conversation. I fell in love with her because she's just a really great
Those negotiations with her and Tasty were great, and I loved seeing Tasty come prepared.
Too, and that's what I love. I was just going to say that is we saw Fig coming back. We didn't get to see her be the complete horrible sort of evil person she was, because she didn't really have a chance for that, but she was trying to like toe the line, but Tasty came in with all the research, which was brilliant.
It was so good, and I love that she had her cheering squad back there being like, you know it, and and that's what's up.
But it was great.
Go girl.
Because
awesome.
it was basically like, we're not going to be treated like idiots or less thans, and we know that the MCC spends, which we know, 20% less than the federal government did with the overall budget.
And you know what I loved about it is because when she was telling her, Figueroa did the same thing.
Right.
We saw her in the first season,
giving
herself all of these, bonuses,
showering with all these bonuses and the money,
fancy
and
car, clothes. So she's telling you firsthand, we know what you do.
We know what you do. We know the CEO makes bank, which again is something that happens in the real world with CEOs of major
Meanwhile,
companies.
We can't get tampons.
And the prison industrial complex, we know it's a business, and it is a business. That's why these people are running these prisons as private prisons from the federal government.
It really shouldn't be a business.
It shouldn't, but it's just like anything else, hospitals and things that are like an everyday thing. But it probably should be left to government who's meting out the punishment to be running it. But that's a whole other story for another day.
Long conversation.
But it was great that she was able to call her out on it, and that Fig was back because we have missed her. We got to see Judy King all well, I missed her in the sense of like her character, because her character was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In general, even though we knew she was, again, another character who was not a good person necessarily, but she was a fun character, and she was always in her fancy shoes.
Person to put in this context,
her whole storyline was really good, and so I missed having her in that storyline there. We saw Judy King all cosmetologized, looking all like ready to go,
ready for air,
and with Meredith Vieira, which was a great
on the review.
Yes, that was brilliant.
Nice little wink.
It really was, and it was great to have her back, and a nice little kind of like real worldish thing of like, oh, we're coming back and we're talking about this, and Judy King thinks it's just about her, but then little does she know that Aleda's there as well, and it's like night and day with the two of them, because Aleda's just more like cussing up a storm.
Yeah, but Aleda was actually putting out some really great points.
She was, and that's the thing.
Got shut down as soon as Judy King revealed that information about the shooting, which sucked. I was like, shut your mouth.
I know.
As soon as she said that, I was like, oh.
But did you think that she
time
did that
is limited
on
for
purpose?
I feel like.
Or was that a way of her? Because at first I was like, did she do that on purpose? But then I thought maybe she would have assumed that Aleda knew, but maybe she didn't, but I didn't know.
I don't think she initially meant to say it. I don't think she went out on the show intending to reveal that, but once she did, she kind of just went with it.
Right, and that's what I wasn't sure. I was trying to figure out, was she purposely trying to do that, or just said it, and then Aleda's like, oh, crap, like, wow, like, didn't know.
I think Judy King figured out in the moment that, hey, I'm going to get to her, because she probably does know
Yeah, I'm going to
her.
get under her skin, and knowing that that's her daughter, but then I wasn't sure how much she really knew, because that was something that just never came up. But again, she basically gave away a huge thing, and also did on the media, which now brought a whole other new layer of stuff.
A wrench in the interrogation in the negotiations,
because they're saying, wait, you were saying there were no casualties or injuries and it was peaceful, and now there's this whole other thing, which also brings us to Piscatella, because Piscatella thought he was getting texts, of course, from Red from his phone, from Humps's phone, that actually were from Red. And so he's thinking like, oh my God, this is really going down. And then, of course, Meanwhile,
he's kind of getting like ripped down or bullied down by the actual SWAT people. He thinks he's this big badass guy, and they're kind of just like, no, you're not shit.
Yeah. And we're running the show here, you're nothing. And, so he was really brought down, because here he was really thinking that Humps was writing him. And now finding out, oh crap, I've been had, because now, I don't know if this was actually him.
Yeah.
And seeing that on the media, which was coincidental, they had a TV playing on the back of their
Before we run out of time, I do got to mention, this really kind of was Daya's episode. So we saw her flashbacks, which by the way, why does she look so much like her? She's her daughter, right? In real life. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, there was a lot of like, I was like, why was it Daya, the one who like got the gun and shot him? It just doesn't seem like her. But then I was thinking about her in this episode, and she really doesn't have a good track record of making decisions. Like, she usually makes bad decisions in the moment with Bennett, with, the whole baby thing.
Right.
And she ended up turning the course this episode, and she started off with her daughter, and that's where we get the porn stash cameo, because she calls his mom
and Mrs. Mom Porn Stash.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but again, is she making the right decision though?
I think she is for her child. Right now her child's in foster care.
Yes, but what she thinks is the right decision, but then you start thinking, is that really? is that really going to be the right decision to be with his mom and knowing what he was like and everything else? And there's a lot of issues that I still have with that, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she's basically making the wrong decision and not knowing what's going on with Bennett and trying to put it's just, again,
the alternative is the baby could potentially be raised in a foster system instead of, at least she knows that this woman is going to be a loving grandmother.
But what she
and I think they've made the case in past episodes that she has other kids, and Poindexter was kind of like the only one that grew up kind of crazy.
I would love to hear what other people would think.
Yes,
and I know we don't have
us.
a lot, but even in hashtag OITNBABTV, let us know in social media and everything after this point too if you're discussing it. But
she arrives to the conclusion of she's going to turn herself in.
Right. Well, that's also, to me, why she was sort of prepping and setting up, making sure her daughter was taken care of, because she wants to tie up those loose ends.
Yes.
And it goes back to sort of what Piper was saying, which you get the bigger thing with Tasties.
The big train metaphor, which was great.
Which was great, and saying basically, do you value the right and wrong of the actions themselves, or the right or wrong of the consequences of those actions?
Yeah.
And that goes back to what we've said from the very beginning, that there's a right and wrong, but it gets to be a lot more muddled and gray.
It is great because at the end of the day, yes, Daya did something bad, but subsequently, a lot of them have done a lot of bad stuff. Right. And even Alex herself said, how is she any different from me?
Exactly.
And you're kind of still like throwing her under the bus.
You are, but their mentality and what Piper was saying is the right or wrong of the actions.
Yeah.
When you're just judging it based on the action of saying, oh, you killed that one person. However, if you looked at the bigger picture, was you killed that one person because you were saving the 5 on the other side here. And that's where you get into that gray area, and where do you judge that?
They could potentially make life better for all the inmates if they can move forward with the negotiations with something.
Is it right that maybe Daya does take the fall because it was sort of on her that helps the rest of the group still get their amnesty? Yeah. That's something to be determined in the bigger picture and how you feel personally and what's going to happen.
She kind of saved them in a way by making that decision herself and not making them make it for her.
And I think she felt that she had to, again, for the greater good and that mentality. And that's sort of what a great thing about this episode. But, you see her relationship again with her mom from the very beginning.
Yeah.
We've seen this through previous flashbacks of previous seasons, and her mom's, you're acting like
look out for yourself.
Yeah, you're a manatee. You got to be a shark, and you kind of float around with your big eyes and just let life pass you by and float around, and you got to go out and be the shark because her mom, is very much the shark. Doesn't put up with crap, and basically that's what.
Exactly.
Daya says, no, Ma, you are the shark. So she's sort of making these shark-like decisions. I don't know if it's going to work out in the long run. I still wanted
her to listen to her mom a little. When she was telling her, she was like, okay, well, don't say that, say it was self-defense, or say it was this, say it was that. It sucks because I wanted Daya to kind of hear her, because I don't want Daya to end up being, in jail forever. There are circumstances that led to it, and she should still try to, help her situation a little bit.
I know. I just think her trying to say she's giving up the baby and then not wanting the baby to know her because she sort of feels like she wants to break the cycle. All that makes me really sad. So
it is sad.
I feel like it was again,
a lot of good intentions,
but the wrong decision in the big picture. So I'll be wanting to know what happens down the next 5 episodes and how that's going to happen. But for me personally, right now, I feel like that was the wrong decision for her to do, and I want to know, is Bennett going to come back in the picture? And then I
do we know whose baby it is? 100%.
Well, we're assuming it's his. It's Bennett's. From what we've gleaned from previous, from what we've gleaned from previous episodes, from what we've gleaned. But
that's a while ago.
It is, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I usually ask everyone out there, because I'll forget certain instances that happened a couple seasons ago, or character names or other things. But I love the montage at the end before we fade to orange. I thought that was a brilliant fade. We have I call them the meth girls because it's all the girls that were all into their
my least favorite
drugs.
This
Me
season.
too, and they have been horrible. And they put Tiffany in the porta potty prison because we've had that out there, and we see the COs back and locked up. We see Suzanne still tied. They had the great song there. It was really kind of emotional. Suzanne's tied in pain and sad, and that was heartbreaking. We see that moment with Red coming down from her high from the speed. Nikki, and like we said, the roles were reversed, and that was kind of a sweet moment. Gloria's calling Pearson's office.
Yeah. I want to mention, so I feel like there's a growing metaphor this season because they're all going into the poo, but like all of the toilets are overflowing.
Yeah.
They're saying like, oh, this toilet doesn't work here.
Yeah.
A lot of the porta potties don't work. I feel like it's a big metaphor for like the shit's piling up this season.
Yeah, it is.
And it's going to catch up on them. It's slowly like before they know it, they're not going to have anywhere to go to the bathroom.
Exactly. It's going to catch
and their
up.
back is against the wall.
Yep. And we see that in the very end before, the episode ends. There's our good friend Piscatella making his move, breaking the lock to the prison door.
I want Red to get him. I'm so sick of him.
He's going into the melee, and that's when we fade to orange. But I thought that whole end was great with the montage and everything else. And now I'm like, ooh, he's in. Now we're really getting to the meat of the season here because we've got...
Things are going to go down.
Yeah, really quickly.
I really hope that it doesn't end up just terrible for everyone. That's like the sinking feeling that all of this is just going to make everything worse.
But here we are getting to the second half of the season, and now we have to fade to orange ourselves because we are way over our time allotted to us.
Talk about.
But in the meantime, until next week, where can they find you?
You
Lesley?
guys can find me at Leslita Face on Twitter and Instagram. Lesley Corral. Hey.
And how do you spell that? Just so
Leslitaface. Leslita Face.
Yay. And again, we're so happy to have you join us.
Thank you.
And you can find me on Twitter at sman80. That's SMAN80. And follow us on social media, using the hashtag OITNBABTV. We will be back next week, same time, reviewing episodes 9, and now we're getting in the double digits, 9 and 10.
Oh, my goodness, exciting.
We're getting there, second half of the season, and we should have April and Sterling back with us too, so maybe a full panel next week, perhaps. Until next time, everyone, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.